What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Wednesday, August 10th, 2022. I'm your host, Sean Murphy, alongside my guy, Jeff Ifrady. Jeff, good to see you as always, my friend.
Good to see you guys, man. I know we're back. We've been doing a ton of content this off season. I know it's been a little slow, but it's always been fun. Like we've been coming out with great videos. So if you guys haven't already, go back and watch. Great content. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited for this episode, though. I really am.
Oh, me too. We got Troy Sergey in the bottom right. Troy, my guy, we're about to go party and celebrate this weekend. It's going to be
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, absolutely. Getting married in September, and then we're having our little bachelor party with Sean in Chicago this weekend. Should have a great time. But I just wanted to give you and Jeff a shout out for your Pistons X Factor video that came out a couple of days ago. I really, really enjoyed watching that with Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, kind of you guys both talking about how they're the X Factors of this upcoming season. I just really appreciated what you guys both had to offer in that video. So if you've not watched that video, go check it out because I really appreciated it.
Well, I
You're the
appreciate
man,
that.
Troy.
And Troy, you talked about bringing something to offer, and this guy to my right has a lot of things to offer that I hope that I can accomplish half of what this guy's done in his career. He is a longtime beat writer and reporter in the Detroit area, covering teams like the Bad Boy Pistons. In addition, also known for his time at 97.1. Now is with us at Woodward Sports, and you can catch him most mornings on the morning show with Adam Baydoun on the Morning Woodward Show. It's our guy, Terry Foster, my man, Terry. And most importantly,
that guy's got some issues, dude.
he does. He does. I was going to ask you, how have you been coping with having to spend your early mornings with Adam Baydoun?
I'll tell you how.
Hey, hey,
Put this in a cup, put a little orange juice in it, and
hey, Uncle T, I did it too. I feel you.
all
I
right.
feel you.
It's just that you had that so ready to go, Terry. I love that.
Dude, he
That's
pulled
what
it.
made it funny.
Oh my gosh. No,
gotta
but
be
Terry,
nearby.
you've had such an awesome career, but also it's also cool to call you my friend too, Terry. I just appreciate you and all being able to hang out and listen to all of your stories, but also like just everything you bring and know about the game of basketball. Just thank you so much for taking time out of your day to hang out with us and hang out and chat for a little bit.
It's fun, and I guess I'm messing up around the building. I've been calling Jeff Jazzy Jeff, and they said no, he's not Jazzy Jeff.
No.
He's Jackass Jeff. I said, oh no, he's not my man.
Who's doing me like that, Tim?
That's Jazzy.
Stick with Jazzy. All right, well, we're not going to Jackass.
The people on the morning show are whacked. I don't understand them.
Yeah, for real. I mean, Jackass. That might have to be a new
Hey, I like it.
nickname.
I
I'm
might
gonna have to pick
copyright it.
up. Yeah, I like it. Oh my
Copyright that thing.
gosh. Well, we're gonna have a whole lot to dig into, a whole lot of basketball we're gonna talk about because this is from Half Court Reach, and every week we talk all things NBA basketball. If you'd like that, be sure to like this, but also subscribe to the channel to be sure that you're catching more. But also be sure to subscribe on all the podcast feeds that your heart can possibly desire. Also, be sure to follow the guys on Twitter. You can follow my guy Jeff at Jeff Ifrady, Troy at Troy Sergey 44, and then Terry, your Twitter's, I believe, at Terry Foster DET. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Perfect. So be sure you shoot Terry a follow as well. Does a lot of great commentary and great jokes on Twitter as well. Terry, I wanted to start, and obviously, a lot of your career was revolved around covering Detroit sports, and a lot of it was around covering the Pistons. And I know obviously Jeff and myself, we've been doing kind of like a lot of covering in the present. I know that you did a lot of coverage in the past. I know you were there around the Bad Boys era. I know you were covering the team for a good while. I know you came back towards the beginning of Tom Gores ownership and were there for a little bit of that. What's been the biggest thing as far as like what's the biggest difference between the Pistons today versus say when Tom Gores took over the team? Because I feel like you and I have had some conversations about how Tom Gores has grown a lot as an owner in his short time owning the Pistons.
He's grown. I think the growth comes with hiring Troy Weaver. When Tom Gores was first, took over the Pistons, I called him Arthur. And Arthur, if you know, there's a movie called Arthur, and there's yes, the drunk guy that's hey, how you doing, guy? That was me. He was Arthur. So I'm not sure if he changed, but he hired someone that is changing the narrative of the Pistons. So you have to look at Tom Gores a little bit more respect, and I like the fact that he's doing more community work, and it looks like he's trying to build something because, Platinum Equity, what do? They go in, they tear stuff down, sell the parts out, and make lots of money. So a lot of people thought that's what he's going to do with the Pistons. So he's going to come in, scramble it up, messed it up, and just move on. He was on his way to doing that when he hired Stan Van Gundy, not only as the coach, but as the general manager. I don't believe in coaching and general managers being the same guy. So, but he was on his way, but he found Troy Weaver, and I got to applaud him for that. So I think the perception of Tom Gores is different because of Troy Weaver and Cade Cunningham.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, you saw, at times, Tom Gores would show up to press conferences or talking on the court and in interviews with people in the press, and the guy was just hell-bent on, I remember at one point he said it as like a pride point of, we're never going to tank. We're never going to be in the draft lottery. We're always going to try to win each and every year. But each regime and everything that they did, it was just like running through a freaking brick wall and expecting and hoping that you were going to finally break through. I mean, I think, with Tom, you brought up the being goofy, but the dude was anytime he was in Detroit, the 1 or 2 years he was in Detroit, he was always plastered on the court. He was never actually, never looked like he was actually mentally present. That's just the way it is.
When he was talking about Chauncey Billups, he said, Chauncey Billups said moving. He tried to say moving and couldn't, and said moving. And when he addressed the crowd, he was lit up.
Yeah.
And that team that he inherited, their franchise point guard at the time was Brandon Knight. You know what I mean? That's the team that he kind of inherited as trying to rebuild. And even I remember when they retired Ben Wallace's number I think they played the Warriors that night, and they actually won that game. The Pistons won that game. That was one of their 9 losses with that 73-9 Warriors team. Tom Gores said at halftime, look at us. We're competing with the best team in the league. We're a contender this year, guys. But it's Marcus Morris, Reggie Jackson. I just don't know if that's a contender. So going to your point, Sean, I think with Troy Weaver and Cade Cunningham, like you said, Terry, I think that really puts his identity more so in the credibility category. So.
Yeah. And you know what? I thought his comments that night were ridiculous. I remember them. But in the NBA, there are what we call league games. And no matter how good you are, you're going to lose that game 8 times out of 10. And Golden State was on the back end of a long East Coast trip. Next day, they're going home. Teams always lose those games. So I was like, Tom, learn your league that you are an owner in, or just calm it down a little bit. You guys really haven't accomplished anything.
Yeah. And even when he hired Stan Van Gundy, it was to me, it was kind of just the big splurge on the biggest name that you could find. And it was really when they hired, I remember when they hired him to be the president and also the coach, it was at the same time that the Clippers hired Doc to do the same thing. It was kind of the league trend at the time. But again, it just seems to me like you said, he might not have changed as a person, but at the very least, what he might have done is realized he didn't know what he was doing and put the keys to the car in the hands of someone who actually does and knows what he's talking about. And it's even been, I think the Detroit, even though the arena was something that was headed by the Red Wings ownership, and I know that was kind of something that was started by them, but I still think even being in Detroit these last few years, has been huge for the team as well. And now having that momentum of these young players behind that, I feel like is just going to make it a different thing. Have you noticed that as well, as far as that momentum of the team actually being in the city?
I they're still not drawing flies, so I guess I'm not as down with that. I mean, I'm gonna say no, because people weren't going to the Palace and they moved downtown. I thought there'd be a higher attendance, and there's not yet.
Right.
I think moving downtown was more of a business decision because Arm Tellem and Tom Gores wanted to do business with people in Detroit.
Right.
Now, if you try to do business with Detroit and you got a franchise in Auburn Hills, guess what? Not going to do business with you. But if you say, hey, we got a team in downtown Detroit, they might say, okay, look, come on in. We'll at least talk. So
Right.
I think it was a business decision for him to do that. And it might be paying off. Who knows? They're doing more and more things in the city. They're building playgrounds and doing community work and passing out bicycles. So,
Right.
Well, I think those 2 playoff games in 2019, I wasn't personally in the audience, but from what I saw, it was pretty hype. And I feel like if this core of a Cade Cunningham, Sadiq Bey, Jaden Ivey could make it to the playoffs here in the next year or two, I feel like you're going to get just a really ruckus, excited crowd. So, but then again, we've seen that crowd happen in Auburn Hills too. So to Terry's point, you could make that argument either way.
Oh yeah, they sold out plenty of times when they were in Auburn Hills. They sold out a heck of a lot of games, but maybe to Terry's point, maybe it just comes down to the fact that Detroit's a city where it's like, maybe they notice that you're back in the city and that's cool, but it's like winning has to mean something at the end of the day too. And I think in Detroit, correct me if I'm wrong, Terry, but especially with this team, with where it's at right now, ultimately what's going to draw the city in is going to be when they're winning games.
No, that's true. In the grand scheme of things, the Pistons are the number 4 team in Metro Detroit. So if they're not winning, people are not showing up. I don't care where you're playing. So he's got to put a good product on the floor. Not only a winning team, but he has to have somebody that the fans are going to gravitate towards.
There it is.
So now he's got Cade Cunningham. He's got Jaden Ivey. I think, people are getting excited about them. And Durham also. They're like, we like this guy. We like what he can do. And I see that they've put out some hype videos and all 3 of those guys. And so they have personalities. Now, when they start winning, that arena is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
And Terry, I guess we don't talk about enough, kind of switching gears here, but not too much, as Pistons fans, about the Bill Davidson era. Tell me what about Bill Davidson that you recall, or what did he mean to that organization? Because he also owned the Tampa Bay Lightning, I believe, too, when they were in the Stanley Cup, when the Pistons were in the finals in 2004. So he's definitely a sports-wide owner that's well-recognized, and I just feel like we just really don't talk about him very much as Pistons fans. So can you shed some light on him?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing Bill Davidson always did is he looked ahead. I'm gonna say the Lions, the Tigers have a tendency of looking at something and say, "Oh, this worked over here. Let's try it over here." Bill Davidson said, "No, we're gonna do our own thing." So I think the biggest thing he did was he bought a private jet for the team and let them use it. Everybody else is flying commercials, but the Pistons, after a game in Detroit, they were playing Milwaukee the next day, they were there. And that made a big difference as far as wear and tear, fatigue. The Pistons were pretty much fresh for games the next day. And sometimes they'd get into a city before the home team got there. So I thought that was pretty important. He looked ahead a lot of times, was innovative, and he had his little relationship with Isaiah Thomas, which was very important. That went sour, but for a while, Bill Davidson didn't treat Isaiah Thomas as an employee. It was like he had ownership of the team. They were like partners, business partners. And that's something the Lions haven't learned. But that relationship went a long way, and I thought that was very important too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, just in general, you know, that even that transition, you know, like a lot of the time, I know, one of the stories and something that people talk about a lot was like, you know, like the Joe Dumars stuff that was happening with that transition from the Davidson era to the Gores era, and like all the transition and ownership and everything that comes with that. And I remember, you know, coming to you at that time and like, you know, and like learning a lot about that. For those that might not no, like obviously that was the time we signed Josh Smith. That was the time that we went and got or not Josh Smith. That was when we got Charlie Villanueva, and that's when we got Ben Gordon and free agency and spent that big money. Do you want to like maybe like shed light to like some of the stuff that people don't really understand about that time and like what that ownership transition was like? Because that was kind of a weird time in Pistons
It was
history.
a weird time. I would defend Joe from this standpoint. I thought Ben Gordon was going to work out. You know, he's coming off the bench for the Bulls. He could light things up. There was no reason to believe that he wouldn't work out with the Pistons. Now, Charlie Villanueva, I got to know him. He was a clown. I remember I did this little thing in my head. I think Charlie touched the ball 15 times and a half, and he had the ball for a total of 18 seconds. In other words, when he got it, he would rise and shoot. He did nothing else. But he wasn't the most professional guy in the world. But I think what happened was because they're in an ownership transition, Joe had some money to spend, but he could only spend it that year. The next year is going to be gone. So if he didn't sign these two guys, he wasn't going to be able to sign anybody. So he took a gamble. It didn't pay off. But he signed two of them, and I really have no idea why Ben Gordon did not work out here.
And I think putting the franchise kind of in somewhat ways in Rodney Stuckey's hands weren't the best idea with that too. It wasn't just that signing, but it was all the touches and having him facilitate the offense. I feel like too was kind of a mistake, I guess. But
right, but they're looking for their Isaiah Thomas, and he wasn't that.
Right.
Yeah,
but
for sure. Yeah,
Uncle T, I do want to ask you one question because you mentioned it. I'm just sitting here listening. I know you mentioned the relationship between Troy Weaver, or at least Troy Weaver and Tom Gores, and letting Troy Weaver be himself, letting him, you know, bring the skill set he has and just not bothering him, not getting in his way. I do want to ask you the relationship with the Bad Boys between Bill Davidson and Jack McCloskey. Like, what's a good when your organization's winning? What should the relationship be from general manager to ownership?
Well, it should be a good relationship where you can go to your owner and say, this is what I want. But here, the fellas, it wasn't always rosy. Those guys fought, particularly Jack McCloskey and Chuck Daly did not get along quite often. They got along enough to build a solid franchise. But I think, you know, from talking to Jack, he felt at the time that whatever he wanted, Bill Davidson would provide. You know, if they wanted new uniforms, he would do it. Not Teal, but he would give it.
Oh, we're getting there, Terry. We're getting there.
Right. You know, they wanted the plane. He's like, cool. We got round ball one. And so he felt comfortable that Bill Davidson, Jack McCloskey was a competitor. This dude wanted to win 82 games by 20 points or more. That's the way he was. And so what he found in Bill Davidson, although he was an elderly guy, that he had that competitive spirit too. So the conversation usually went something like this. We need a plane. Bill Davidson. Done. We need a new bench. We need a new locker room. Bill Davidson. Cool, you got it. So it was pretty simple because he wasn't trying to pinch pennies. He wasn't, you know, he didn't care about, because he had money. And that's the thing that confuses me about owners. Some of these dudes are billionaires. But if it's to make a $3 million improvement to help their team, a lot of times they're like, no, I'm not doing it. But Bill was like, just cut the check. Boom. Whatever you want.
There's a story, and I forgot which player shared it, but it was a guy who who was playing for the Phoenix Suns under Robert Sarver at the time. And he was due for a new contract. He was an unrestricted free agent, and he wanted to come back and he wanted to make a little more money. And he went to dinner with Robert Sarver, explained his reasoning, said, this is why I think I should be paid this. And he was like, you know what? I absolutely agree with you. And everything that you said was right. But I don't have to pay you it, so I'm not going to. Because that's just who Robert Sarver was. And you're not kidding. There's just some of these owners out there that are just that will pitch every penny, that will cut every corner, that the word luxury tax makes them cringe on the inside. I mean, one thing, Tom Gores, at the very least, he's shown he'll pay, because even though our team sucked back a few years ago, it was expensive.
Right,
it was expensive stuff.
But that reminds me of Lions GM Russ Thomas. He wouldn't pay guys. They got upset with him. Guys would ask for a few bucks, and we have 500,000 or whatever. He said no. And the thing that happens, there's a trickle down effect when you do that. Yes, you probably saved a little money. But then that guy who didn't get his money talks to the rest of his teammates. Then they get pissed off because they want to see their teammates make more money. Then when it's time for free agents and somebody calls them and says, hey, what's ownership like? Oh, man, they just nickel and dime us all the time, blah, blah, blah. He's like, that free agent's like, okay, I'm not coming there. Boom, click, hangs up the phone. So there's a trickle down thing, and I'm not saying pay them everything they want. No, you can't do that. That's impossible. And you do have to pay attention to the luxury tax and things like that. But a lot of times you can pay, you can pay, and then you lie to us and say, couldn't do it because of the salary cap.
Right.
And then you check your little figures and say, wait a minute, they still got money on the cap. What's he talking about? No, that's just somebody being cheap.
Yep, exactly.
And you know what? When you're cheap in sports, it bites you in the ass.
Yes, it does.
Yep. I bring up one of the things we bring up all the time on the Woodward Pistons pod was when Ben Wallace when they wouldn't give him the extra $12 million when he left for free agency and went to Chicago, and he was just like, I left because of the money. Simple.
But I think at that point Ben Wallace was baked.
He certainly wasn't the same player when he went to Chicago.
So do you reward him for what he's done in the past? I don't know. I can sort of see the Pistons' logic on that one, because he wasn't helping them anymore. In fact, at that point, Ben Wallace was no longer the leader of this team. Chauncey Billups was. Chauncey said, I'll take over the reins. So, he wasn't what he used to be at that point.
I mean, they certainly were explosive. They went in an offensive direction, and Rasheed was pretty awesome after it. So it's not like it was all and it's not like they were playing bad basketball when he left. But speaking of bad boys a little bit, and I know we went there. I know Troy was excited when he heard that you were coming on, and I know you had a question you wanted to ask you specifically. So Troy, I'll let you take away on this.
Yeah. Well, I would love to just hear a Bill Laimbeer story. Terry's favorite Bill Laimbeer story. I'm a big fan, one of my favorite bad boys, and I would love to hear something that I don't know.
All right, I'll tell you a story. Pistons are playing San Antonio. It's a close game. And before the game, Chuck Daly complained about how many three-pointers Bill Laimbeer was taking. So they it's like 10 seconds left. Chuck calls timeout, draws up a three-point play for Bill Laimbeer. So it works to perfection. Bill Laimbeer rises to take three, and he passes to Dennis Rodman. And Dennis is like, it's like a hand grenade in his hand. He's like, oh, I'm shot, bricks it, and they lose. And so we talked to Bill Laimbeer. He said, I just said I was taking too many three-point shots.
He was right.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Coach said I was taking too many.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Oh my
I feel like there's a lot more petty back in the day too. Like there was a lot more petty, I feel like, which is hilarious. I love it.
Oh, there was a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of petty. I tell you, who used to get pissed every year, Isaiah Thomas, because he thought Jack McCloskey was drafting point guards every year, which is not true, but he did draft some point guards, and every time he drafted a point guard, Isaiah would just privately was stew. He said, "Looking for my replacement. I don't appreciate this. I'm still playing at a high level. What's going on here?" So there was a lot of petty. Yeah, I admit.
Oh. I mean,
I guess I got another question too, kind of going off of the financial thing we were talking about earlier. Was there ever a signing or maybe even a trade too that happened in the Pistons history where you just knew that it wasn't going to work out? Like you called it, front office thought it would be great, but Terry knew in his heart, no, this ain't going to happen.
Darko Milicic.
Oh, really? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I had a guy I was communicating with in Spain, and his hobby was watching European games. And the reason I listened to him is he told me about this guy from Germany that was going to be really good, and his name was Dirk Nowitzki, and he was right about that.
Yeah.
So somehow he was a Piston fan living in Spain, and he said, "I hear that Joe's going to draft Darko Milicic." He said, "Tell him don't do it." He says, "All he is he can showcase himself during practices. He can do good workouts, but he can't play. During the game, he's lost. He has no game. He has no go-to moves. He's not good at all." So then he was asking me, "What did the Pistons see in him?" I said, "They worked him out and said he looked good." He said, "Have they actually seen him play?" I said, "I can't answer that." He said, "They saw him play. There was no way they would draft him." And so the guy ended up being right. So I trying to be a good guy that I am, I went. They had a press conference at the Palace. I went out and told Joe before the draft. I said, "Joe, I know this guy. His hobby is watching European games." He said, "Darko can't play, so don't draft." And Joe's like, "Who's this guy? Who's this?" I said, "I don't know. He told me about Dirk Nowitzki, so I'm down with him." He said Darko cannot play, but he said if you got a second round pick him up.
Okay,
but don't use your number 2 pick.
He must have heard if you have a second overall pick, go and make
some wax in his ears.
Hey, I gotta ask a follow-up to that too, because I got into a little debate with Braylon the other day in the chat, in our chat thread, and he was talking
Braylon
about
knows everything, but go ahead.
And I want to ask you directly, because if anybody knows this answer to this question, it would be you. He specifically said, I made the argument, I still feel this way, that if the Pistons took Melo second overall, that, because we know how, especially how it would be Larry Brown at the time. Like I don't think Melo would walk out and be the Melo we know today. Like today, Melo was bred to be what he is. Like in every situation, Melo is the franchise player. They look at him like, listen, you're leading us to victory. Put the ball in your hands and we'll figure it out. I think with Detroit, there was a chance that he could have maybe playing with veterans, learning how to win, learning how to play the right way. It's not like Melo would have walked in and be like, all right, scoot over, Chauncey, scoot over, Rip. It's my team now. I'm getting my 25. From your point of view, and a lot of people, we've had a lot of debates about this. Do the Pistons still win the title if they take Melo?
Yeah, because Melo would say, "Hey, Tayshaun, move over. This is my starting spot."
And I'm cool with that.
Yeah. I think they still would have won it, and they may have done a little bit more down the road, because then you would have built a team a little bit around Melo when these guys got older, or Dwayne Wade was also in consideration.
Right. That's another one. Yeah.
Right. So in hindsight, I would have rather have Dwayne Wade, but I think what the Pistons missed out on is they missed out on continuing that run.
Right.
Because then you would have a young guy, and maybe you build around him. Maybe you find some other young guys that you can put around him and continue the run a little bit longer. So I think that's where they blew it with the Darko thing.
Yeah, it's
and
really
he also one. I want to add this too.
They probably wouldn't have traded for.
He said that, but he also said, he's like, my sources. He talks to people on the team. I don't know who, he didn't specify who he talked to, but he said they didn't want Melo. Like they didn't even want. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how true that is, but in your opinion, like, is there any truth to that? Possibly. Like, are guys out like Rashid or not Rashid, but Ben Wallace, Chauncey, Rip? Are these guys actually saying Tayshaun, like, yeah, we're not. Don't take Melo. Like, I don't think they would do.
I think it only goes to this. Maybe they're trying to support Tayshaun, and they're saying, well, he's our guy because he's our teammate. He's good enough, so we don't need Melo. I think they may have gone there, but as far as now, we don't want him. I don't think that was the case. I think,
or maybe said it now.
Yeah, I think it was more of a case that they're trying to support their teammates because all these guys always support their teammates. They're always the greatest thing since sliced bread, and so that's as far as it goes for me.
Right, and I mean the other thing they definitely knew was that Darko wasn't it. And they've made that public knowledge. I mean, like that's
so. If you're not taking Darko, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And once they figured that out, the players just crushed him in practice. You know, and yeah, that's another thing is he couldn't play, but the players made sure of that because they would just crush him in practice. Like Rashid would just make sure that this guy couldn't get out of bed the next day. He was just work him doing practice. But that was the Pistons have a history of doing that. If they see somebody on the roster who can't play, they go right after him and say, management, you goofed up here. What are we going to do about this?
Hey, I like it. Mm-hmm. Are they real or are they not? Like, what are they? What are they built of? You know, like if you're going to back down, then clearly you weren't the option anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Got another do that all the time. They drafted a guy named Doug Overton.
Okay,
anybody remember him?
I don't remember Doug Overton.
Well, he was a point guard, and so after a few weeks, Isaiah decided this guy can't play, so he wanted to show everybody he couldn't play. So in front of the media, which I was a part of at the time, he decides to play one-on-one against Doug Overton. So Isaiah would get the ball at the top of the key and said, I'm going to fake left, pump fake, and then spin around layup. And then he would exactly what he said. He would do it. Then he would say, I'm going to dribble drive to the left and scoop with my right hand. And he would do it. So he humiliated the guy. And then the last shot, they're playing one for the last point. Isaiah said, Doug, and he did a step three. He said, Doug, you done dug your ass a hole. And that was in the game. And so I asked Isaiah about that. I said, dude, did you have to humiliate my man like this? Isaiah said, I told him what I was going to do. I said, yeah, you did.
He's got a point.
Dug your ass a hole.
But the point is, he wanted to show the guy wasn't Piston material.
Right.
Oh, my gosh. That's so good.
I guess, I got another question for you. I would love to know your first initial thoughts when you found out that the Pistons traded Chauncey Billups for Allen Iverson.
I was like, oh, my God, are you kidding me? But I had a conversation with Joe about that probably about 2 weeks before him, and he hinted that he wanted to do that. But I don't think he did it to improve the Pistons. At that point, nobody was talking about the Pistons, and one thing Joe said was the worst thing you can have in professional sports is I much rather have you talking about our team and saying we suck than not talk about us at all. And so I think part of the reason he did that, and he kind of hinted at it, that he wanted the Pistons to be relevant again.
Yeah.
So that's why he made the move. But AI wasn't what he was, and his game just, your Pistons all about teamwork, share the ball and everything. You bring in AI, and that was not what he was about.
You bring it, you go from the going to work Pistons to you have this guy talking about practice. It's like it's the antithesis. It's the exact opposite.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Plus, Iverson pissed me off one time. This was before he was traded to the Pistons. He was with Philly, and there was I forget who we were talking. We were talking to somebody, and he was dressing. So I turned around so I wouldn't, see his junk. And so Iverson accused me of looking at his package. And I said, you got to be kidding. I said, I ain't looking at that. I said, dude, I'm trying to be respectful of your teammate. But he claimed I was looking at his package. I'm like, dude, no.
You're like, absolutely not.
That ain't happening.
Oh my gosh,
Absolutely
man.
not.
Allen Iverson.
How often
something
did
else.
you interact with other teams through the media? I mean, I know you were with the Pistons a lot, but how often was it that you would have any type of interaction with any other NBA player? And does any other reaction or interaction stick out that a player did to you or said something to you?
Man, Troy, you're geeked right now. I can tell.
I thought we needed to see what the other side had to say sometimes. And
Sure.
my most famous one was with Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley has
I
said
love
some
this story.
controversial things. And so I went to talk to Charles about, he talked about we're not role models and stuff like that. So we ended up, they came to the Palace. I went in and talked to Charles before the game. Now, the media is kicked out of the locker room 90 minutes before tip-off. So the game starts at 7:30, and it's like 6:05. So I'm like, okay, I got to get out of here. So there's a nervous PR guy like, hey, Charles, it's within 90 minutes. He's got to leave. And Charles is like, we're not finished. My man don't have to leave. So it's the only time I was in the locker room. Like, I was in there until like an hour before tip-off. Charles is like, you ain't got to leave. So I stayed there. So the next time the Pistons went to Philly, he said, why don't you come and see me before the game and we'll talk again. We'll shoot the breeze. So anyway, before the game, Bill Laimbeer got injured. And so I couldn't go into the Philadelphia locker room. I had to work on Bill Laimbeer, hurt his foot story. And so during the game, we were sitting at the end row and in the end zone line. So the ball came out of bounds and I caught it and then I threw it. I thought I was throwing it back to the ref, but it was to Charles. And Charles was like, I thought you were going to come see me before the game. I said, well, I couldn't because Bill Laimbeer was injured and stuff. And he said, I figured that asshole had to be involved in it. So Charles, it wasn't like, give me the ball, we got to play. He's like, he wants to have a conversation. So we're talking. And so the ref is blowing the whistle. He said, Chuck, we got to play. He said, I'm sorry, I got something else to do. I'm like, I understand. I think he lit up the Pistons for 35 that night or something crazy that.
That whole sequence perfectly just summed up Charles Barkley's career. Like, just casual, go on the court, put
casual,
up 35.
Don't give a damn. Right.
Troy, Terry, do you feel comfortable sharing that Charles Barkley Manute Bull story that you told me about?
I was going right into that.
Okay, thank God. I was like, that story is so good.
He's in Phoenix. And I went to see Charles Barkley. Say, what's up, Chuck? So we were just talking. And so Manute Bull, before the game, made the horrific mistake of wanting to take a shower before the game. So he takes his clothes off and he walks across the locker room. And Charles looked at him and says, watch this. Charles lit up on Manute Bull's feet about how rusty they were, how ugly they were, looked like giraffes' feet. And then he just kept going on, and we were like cracking up. And so Manute Bull, nicest guy in the world, he said, Charlie, that's not funny. Stop it. I'm sorry. This is hilarious. So I was laughing so hard, my stomach was hurting. I thought somebody had shot me. I was just bent over so bad. So Charlie, his final line was about how rusty his feet were. Now, let me tell you, for 20 minutes, he didn't talk about Manute Bull's hands or his legs or his anything else, just his feet. He roasted this man about his feet for 20 minutes, which is impossible to do. His final line was, man, those feet are so rusty, ain't Lubriderm can't do shit with that. You got to get Quaker State or Pennzoil to get the ass off those feet. And, man, I just lost it.
Rest in peace, Manute
It's just the
Bol.
way he said it. Lubridoom. It's just the way he said it. And then
Man, you want to get some
you got to get
Lubriderm.
Quaker State of Pennzoil to get the ash off those feet. I was dying.
Oh my gosh, that is
That's
so
bad.
good.
We got to
man.
tell Bobo that story.
Yeah, we should.
Oh my gosh, man, that is so good. I love that
Can I-
story so much.
Can I ask you too, Terry? Because I was watching ESPN the other day, and I saw a question that was posed. They had Joe Dumars on, and Jalen Rose talked about it too. And Jalen Rose and Joe Dumars both believe that Isaiah Thomas has the best ball handles of all time. He's the best ball handler of all time. What is your opinion on that? Do you think Isaiah? I know he's up there, but out of the Kyries, the Steph Currys, like where would you put Isaiah Thomas in that realm?
I mean, to say he's number one, I mean, you could say that. I mean, he had great handle, but I remember at the time, I'm going blank now, but Tim Hardaway had great handle too at the same time.
Hardaway.
Yeah,
Isaiah played. I think Steph Curry's handle is amazing too. He's got this little fake thing, and Isaiah was up there. I'm not going to say he was number one, but there's a list of guys that was with Steph Curry, Tim Hardaway, Isaiah Thomas, Allen Iverson, even though he was a little
pre-jackass Kyrie.
right. No,
Yeah.
Kyrie belongs up there before
Yeah.
he figured out that the world was flat. But no, Kyrie is. I think he's up there too.
Yeah. And I think Joe Dumars also said when he said it, he's like, well, Isaiah's my guy. Like that's my point guard. So I'm going with Isaiah. But I think Jalen Rose like genuinely, and like, listen, he's a big Isaiah fan. So maybe that has something to do with
And
it.
he's a
like,
Pistons
he's
fan
number
too.
one. Of course, yeah. And from Detroit. So I had to get your opinion on it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a group of guys. I wouldn't put him number one with a bullet. It's just too many.
A lot of talented guys, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Terry, speaking of, I know we've talked a good amount a little bit there about like some like Pistons past and some guys you've covered and had the chance to be around. I would be remiss though if I didn't ask you a little bit about what you thought about this Pistons future and this young team that we have coming up just with the last few minutes we have with you. What are your thoughts on this Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey core? What do you think about what they have building right now? And at least from the basketball that have you watched so far, how do you feel about the direction this team's going in?
I will be stunned if this doesn't end up in a championship. And but here's the thing. I think this Piston team has to figure out with all the other Piston teams who's going to be their role guy that puts them over the top.
Yeah.
Bad Boy Pistons, their role guy was two guys. It was Dennis Rodman and John Sally. They wouldn't have won those championships without those two.
Yep.
Because Dennis Rodman had to rebound, which nobody in the league wanted to do. He had to take his shots at Michael Jordan now and then. And then he was a guy that could guard a center too.
Yeah.
John Sally wasn't much during the season, but during the playoffs, he that's light switch came on. He was blocking shots, which he did a lot, but then he was scoring like 15 points a game.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn. So, and then the going to work Pistons, they don't win it unless they get Rasheed Wallace. So he was their role player / final piece. At some point, this Piston team is going to have to get their role player / final piece. And that may not be for another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So they have to figure it out. But I'm going to use a word to describe the build of, I'm not going to call it a rebuild, but the building of the Pistons. It's more sophisticated than what we saw in the past. Yeah. Troy Weaver has a game plan. He had to tear up a team. He had to, first of all, then he had to put a team on the floor so people at least have somebody to play every night. So he had to figure that out. And so I think he's game planning. He's a chess player. When he makes a move, he's thinking about his next move. Because if you notice, whenever he makes a move, a lot of us are like, what the hell is he doing? And then 3 days later, we go, now I get it. I think Dumars and Jack McCloskey weren't as refined as Troy Weaver. They were just making moves to make the team better. And I think Troy Weaver is playing chess. So that's the difference. So it's a more sophisticated rebuild or building of the Pistons than it was in the past.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you look at like a lot of the draft picks and decisions that they'd make, like in lack of better terms, it just kind of looked like it was a guy that they're like, yeah, we hope he's good. Like that'd be cool. Right. But like, now like when the Pistons go into a draft, like at the end of it, you can see the vision of like what their fit's going to be. Like Jaden Ivey, it's like you don't have to wonder what his role is going to be on this team. With Jalen Duren, you don't have to wonder what his role's going to be on this team. Whereas like in the past, we get a guy like Jalen Duren, it'd be like, all right, yep, franchise player. That's the guy we're building around. That's it. That's done. It's like, no, it's like with Troy, it's like, no, he's looking to go get another guy to pair. He's going to look to be aggressive in those moments and really build that team. And like you said, I love that you pointed out how it's not just about getting the stars. It's about getting the good role players, because I mean, Shaq even said back in the day, like he said, stars get you, the stars will get you there, but it's the role players that will get you over the top. Right. So
because there's always a time, and it usually happens in the third quarter. Like the second half of this third quarter, teams struggle sometimes. But what the going to work Pistons did, what they did was, okay, we're going to change the pace on you. We're going to send out Lindsey Hunter and what's the other guy's name? Mike
James.
Mike James. Yeah, we're going to send those out. And so now your guard is going to be harassed for 8 minutes. So how does he handle that? So then by the fourth quarter, the opposing guy is like, damn, we just survived this. And then you put Chauncey back in. And he's doing more conventional basketball, but you might be too tired to handle Chauncey at that point.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And then the bad boy Pistons, they would send out an entire different starting five who are their bench players, and they would wear you down. So I think a lot of what happened was both these teams had talent to beat you, but they also had pieces to wear you down. So then when you come back in the fourth quarter, you got no energy. Yeah. It's like, I survived their bench people barely, and now their starters are back out here, and I'm like tired. And so I think that played a big role in the Pistons' success too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely it did. Now, before we wrap up, Terry, I do got to ask you about one last thing. You briefly mentioned it earlier, and it's the Teal. The Teal's back. And I know you specifically I texted you to come on the podcast, and I was excited, and I was like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And he was like, I will do that. But let me warn you, I am writing a blog right now making fun of you and the rest of the
I did, and I apologize for that.
It's a good read.
But, I just don't like the uniforms, but I support your efforts. I support that you like it. Now, here's what I'm going to do for you. After the blog, someone from the Pistons called me, and they were threatening to send me some Teal stuff. If that happens, I'm passing along to you guys.
Hey, hey, if you wanna just give them my shirt size, I will certainly not say no, Terry. That is for sure.
You got to go to Jersey, man. You got to get the double, triple X. It's got to be oversized.
Oh, absolutely.
I actually have a question, Sean, about that. So I guess I'm still a little bit confused. Is the Teal, that old logo with the Teal, is that our new official logo, or is this just a new off-brand that they're doing some games?
No, it's just the city. So it's just the city edition.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the city edition. They're gonna wear it they're wearing the Teal for 10 games. They're gonna bring back I'm assuming they're probably gonna do a special court and all that stuff with it too. I would imagine that you could never get anyone in that building to make that the permanent uniform color ever again.
Confused about, so
yeah, for sure.
Let me ask you fellas, if it became the permanent uniform, would you be in favor of it?
No.
I mean, I don't know about the permanent uniform.
No,
I mean, the Pistons are red and blue. That's just what they are. But at the same time, I mean, listen, here's what I will say, Terry. I don't really align with, like, I understand it wasn't a good era of Pistons basketball, but
It wasn't bad.
it wasn't a good era. I get it. But but at the same time, I feel like this new era feels like they can embrace the teal and they can almost redefine it to mean something different. And that's something that I think that they're looking to do.
Yeah.
So that's my argument, is that the teal doesn't have to be defined by this bad era. It could be something that we can bring into the future. And even then, the Grant Hill era wasn't exactly bad Pistons basketball all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and also on top of that too, I feel like this whole, like, it was a bad era or wasn't it a great era? What era are we in now, Terry? Like, what is this era? I
Yeah,
thought
no,
this was
it's not
bad
good.
too.
Not good.
So maybe
They
it's
did
a
win
chance
50
for.
I think they won 50 games 3 times.
Yeah.
That's not bad. But the problem,
Well, I'm talking
winning
about the last, like,
games
10 years.
was some of the players wanted to murder their coach, which is not good. Doug Collins. So even though they were winning, they're like, we got to get this guy out of here because he's crazy.
Choke him out.
Oh my gosh.
And he
man.
became
Yeah,
an
he was-
assistant.
I loved him
in
on-
the Iverson
Yeah.
years, right? Wasn't he assistant? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Doug Collins, if he could mellow out a little bit, he would have been Phil Jackson because the dude can coach. He had first crack at Michael Jordan and blew it. He came here, and when he came here, Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen used to make fun of him on the court when he's going off on a guy for no reason. I got Doug Collins stories for you too, man. Guy was
I'll take a Doug Collins story.
yeah,
I'll
should we
never
close
say
with
no to a
one?
Doug Collins story.
there was a rough practice, and I was getting fed up with Doug Collins like everybody else. So Terry Mills squares up on Doug Collins and says, the only reason I'm not kicking your ass right now is because of a paycheck. That's it.
T. Mills was real. He was real.
Oh, he was real.
Right now.
Yeah, he didn't mess around.
And I didn't get that one from sources. I got that from Terry Mills.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh
right
my
to you.
gosh, that is so good, man. Terry, if I could have like any story one day covering basketball that's as good as yours,
Yeah,
I'm gonna feel happy, man.
Yeah.
I was just stick around the team. You'll have plenty of them. You'll be telling me stories.
Oh, for sure.
Whoa, really? Whoa, I didn't know that.
I'm hoping so, man. No, but Terry, in all seriousness, man, like obviously, like as a basketball mind, I love picking your brain, but just in general, you're just one of the coolest guys I've ever met, Terry, and I'm grateful for you. So thank you so much for making the time and coming on.
Thank you. I love you guys. I always enjoy coming on here. You're a fun group.
I appreciate that.
I tell you who thinks what you're doing is important. Isaiah Lord Thomas, because he says that the Pistons story needs to be told over and over and over again, and he believes that they need advocates. So you guys are advocates for the Pistons, and keep it going.
Absolutely, man. That's what we do here, man. That's what we do. It's what we're about. Right. And we talk all things basketball, but we're rooted in Pistons, man. So Terry, definitely.
Well, for next time I'm on with Adam. Notice.
Hey.
Oh no! This isn't the one I want. I want this one.
This you need one heavier.
No, single barrel.
Oh, there.
Single barrel.
Uncle T, how many more stories can we get out of you if we start dipping into that?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, that's probably the dangerous.
I just opened up the whole bank, man.
Well, hey Terry, we're definitely gonna have to bring you on for another story time pod, man. I love.
If I start drinking this, I'll even tell embarrassing stories about myself. So at that point.
Well, hey, we're gonna put that one on the calendar, man. That's gonna be a fun one.
Right. I'm there.
Oh my gosh. Well, Terry, you're the best, man. Thank you so much, seriously, and thank you all to those that were listening. If you like this episode of the From Half Court podcast, be sure you like it and subscribe to the channel. And let us know down below as well. Be sure to show some love to Terry Foster in the comments as well.
I love love.
And show them some love on Twitter as well, too, man. Absolutely. But with that, we want to thank you all so much for tuning in here. We will catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe.